Dare to be different in Yumiko's new Grace Velvet collection. Introduced by Maria Kochakova, this brand new fabric is bold in color, singular in presence, and classic in style. As one of Yumiko's favorite ventures to date, the fabric subtly reflects light in its own way and exudes a spirit of confidence to inspire every dancer to find strength in their individuality. Shop the collection online at yumiko.com and in stores now. Don't forget to also check out the recently launched 2020 colors and monthly ready-to-wear options. This episode is brought to you by the Town of Vail, a sponsor helping to host the Vail Dance Festival in our community. I'm Rebecca King-Ferraro.
And I'm Michael Breeden, and you're listening to Conversations on Dance.
Today on Conversations on Dance, we are happy to bring you our full conversation with celebrated choreographer Pam Tanowitz from the 2019 Vail Dance Festival. We spoke with Pam from a live panel event at Washington, D.C.'s Kennedy Center in episode 140, and we are thrilled to be able to get some time to speak with her a little more in depth about her career and work in today's episode. As a choreographer, Pam Tanowitz is known for her abstract treatment of classical and contemporary movement ideas. Her work is deeply rooted in formal structures, manipulated and abstracted by her until the viewer sees through to the heart of the dance. In 2000, Tanowitz founded Pam Tanowitz Dance to explore dance making with a consistent community of dancers, and has since choreographed works for some of the world's most renowned dance companies, including the Martha Graham Dance Company, Paul Taylor American Modern Dance, and the New York City Ballet. She has been commissioned by the Joyce Theater, the John F. Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts, Jacob's Pillow Dance Festival, Vail Dance Festival, and many other leading arts institutions. Today we talk with Pam about how she studied choreography, what inspires her, how she works in the studio, and about her work that she created for the Vail Dance Festival in 2019. Okay, Pam, well, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so happy to have you. This finally worked out. It's been 3 years in the making, honestly, for us to have you in this room.
I know. I feel sort of bad about that.
No, it's just paths crossing and not being able to make it work. So we're happy to have you now.
Yes, I'm happy to be here.
Awesome.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, we had such a great conversation with you in DC on the panel, but now we have you by yourself. But for those who may not have heard that episode, could we do a little bit of a backtrack and just kind of get into how you first became interested in dance and when you started making dances yourself?
Sure. Oh, wow. That's like a lot.
Yeah. You've got 2 minutes on the clock.
Okay. So I can just start with how I started making dances, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I mean, I could go further back. I started with modern, sort of, I think I was 10 or 11 or 12. I grew up in Westchester, and my mom, just signed me up. I actually I tagged along with a friend to modern dance class. I stayed for the rest of my life, but also through high school, and she dropped out probably the next year or something.
Right.
And then my two sisters also started taking. So all three of us, I have two sisters, all three of us were into modern dance. And that it's actually interesting. And we had serious teachers. I had all the teachers came from New York, by train to Westchester. So I had Hannah Kahn, I had Marcus Schulkine, I had Lonnie Morton, like working artists that were teaching in the city and making work. So I didn't know at the time, but I had a really amazing education. And my favorite story, I've told it before, is that my mom, signed me up for a workshop. And I had Blondell Cummings, who is, I don't know if you know who that is, but she's amazing, experimental performer. She performed with Meredith Monk. I had Ohad Naharin. I had no idea who these people were, So that's all probably somewhere in here. And then I went to Ohio State for my undergrad, and that's where I started choreographing. And about my junior year is when I got serious.
Yeah. So you were choreographing just mostly on students at the school at the time?
Well, I started, they had a very rigorous choreography and composition track.
That's cool.
Which was very different from when I went to Sarah Lawrence, was very open. So it was really nice for me to have like sort of very strict and then a very open, so because they say you need to learn the rules to break the rules. So that was literally my, history. So it was very strict. You couldn't just choreograph there. You had to take improv 1, improv 2, composition 1, composition 2. Finally, you got music, and we had a choice between 2 pieces of music. We couldn't pick our own music.
Wow.
Yeah. And then finally you got to choreograph a piece. You couldn't just, and then you had to audition it. And people didn't get in.
Right.
It was very competitive, and
That's
I was a little undergraduate. I was in classes with graduate students, so it was very intimidating.
Wow.
I actually recently had a meeting with Linda Murray at the New York Public Library, slowly talking about my archives, because she thinks it's interesting that I could start working on it now and not wait. And what that means. What does archive mean? And it's not just what you think it is. It's not just videos of your dances. It could be anything that reveals who you are as an artist. So I was looking through all these boxes and books and stuff, and I found my journal from Comp 1.
Wow.
And it was I was scared shitless. I was like, I can't believe this. I'm so scared. I hate this class. Is my worst class. I'm, sweating. I'm nervous, because people would give feedback, and it was intense.
Right.
I think that's so interesting, because even though the ballet world is getting better about encouraging new choreographers, it's not like that. You don't get, I don't think as far as I understand it, you don't get feedback in that way. It's okay, here's the studio and some dancers.
Make stuff.
But but based on what? How much do you think those classes impacted who you are as a choreographer?
It's everything. It was everything. And like I said, and then I studied with all different teachers. So they all had different experiences in my 4 years there. I studied with Vera Blaine, who is the head of the department, Vicky Uris, who is a Paul Taylor dancer who went on to make her own work, John Giffen, who studied with Anthony Tudor and went to Juilliard. You know him?
Wow.
No, I mean, the name is familiar.
So, so it's my training is very eclectic,
Right.
So of course it shaped everything.
Were most of these people that you were working with people who had experience in choreography themselves, or just okay,
absolutely,
yeah.
And that's the other thing is right. You want a teacher who also does it, because how else can they teach it?
So how did they kind of shape you while still allowing you to be yourself and create your own voice? But how did they kind of give you that feedback? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah. So I know exactly how to answer this, because there was a moment where I had a teacher who in technique class totally ignored me. I mean, I'm not a bad dancer. I'm not I can move, but I'm not a star dancer, and I was somehow able to take whatever movement people gave me and never did it the way they wanted me to do it. I would do it how I would do it. So I knew sort of early on that I wasn't going to be in a company, because how can you do that? You need to do what the choreographer wants.
Right.
But I had the same teacher as my comp teacher, and I got so much attention from her. Do you know what I mean? I could tell that she was excited and supportive and pushed me, and my piece, got on the program, at Ohio State. And my first piece that I choreographed was called I Only Drink Coffee, which I love. And so, but so to speak, so that's sort of a funny thing, which, and I noticed later on was that, I got totally ignored because I wasn't a star, high legs and stuff that. But then I got all this attention in this other arena. But seriously, I think for me, the information that I took from it was I realized that I wanted to make things more than be in things. I wanted to solve problems and puzzles and be challenged and try to figure out how to make things work. It's a different mindset,
right?
Than taking something, someone like Melissa Toogood, who's a brilliant performer, incredible. Her art is taking movement and making it work. That's a different, I couldn't do that.
Right. Interesting. Yeah.
So that, it really makes me think of, one of my favorite things about your work is the way that you can weave influence into it. So I can see that something is discernibly Cunningham or Balanchine, but it's still very much your voice. So who are your major influences, and how do you think that you're able to be yourself, even when you're kind of, quote, speaking as them?
Yeah. That's a hard one. I mean, that's a good question. It's a hard one for me to answer because I think a lot of it is intuitive. I think that and it's not a way for me to weasel out of your question. I think I am an intuitive artist. That being said, it doesn't mean I shouldn't try to figure it out sometimes, you know? A lot of times I don't know what my pieces are till after. So like while I'm making something, I don't know like, oh, I'm doing that or I'm doing that. Sometimes I can see it after or months after, you know? There was a part in my Bartok ballet where everyone was like, four temperaments, and I didn't really realize it. I mean, I love balancing. I love Fortes. That's one of my favorites. So I'm sure it was in there, but it wasn't a conscious. Sometimes I do a conscious. Sometimes I say I'm taking this step and then I'm going to like work on it more. And like, so if it's like a pivot step from balancing, like, you know, maybe we do 25 pivots then, not just like 2 or whatever, you know, or like change the tempo, change. So sometimes I am doing it consciously. Like my new piece here, there's a section that's like from Rubies or inspired from Rubies. That came from the dancers. And that to me has meaning because it came from the dancer that dances Rubies. Right.
Can you tell us that story? You were telling us the other night how you kind of just like asked the dancers.
Yes. Well, I think, I think that the reason why I'll take it back a little bit, and I think I said this to you also maybe in that same conversation, which is I'm realizing more and more that along with what you said about the movement that I'm working with, and I'm just realizing now I didn't really fully answer you because you asked me about my influences, but we can get back.
We'll get back. Yeah. We'll go back to it.
Is that I'm realizing more and more that my pieces are about the people in the room. So that leads to what you're asking, which is I'll set up a structure, I'll set up my movement. I don't do it too soon because it's not improv. You know, I'm not saying like, I don't work with improvisation in that way. Like what are the images you're interested in? Or like, you know, like it's very specific, but while we're making stuff, I'll say to a New York City ballet dancer, like, what's your favorite ballet that you perform? What part of it? Why? And then I think about like if that's interesting to me, you know, it's not like everything gets in, you know. Or I'll say, what have you done? You know, you've danced your whole career at ABT. What have you not done? That have you ever like rolled on the floor or done this or like? So would that be interesting for you to try? You know, because inherent in this festival is also these dancers haven't danced together. You know, I was talking to Miriam and she said like, when or where else can I ever be on stage with Melissa Toogood and Carla Corbs? Corbs, is that right? I asked her. Corbett.
We've heard a lot.
So, you know, where could a dancer like Miriam Miller stand on a stage with Melissa and Carla? Like, you know, it's amazing. And then back to me, like, when can I have all these dancers? What opportunity do I have to make a duet for Calvin, Royal, and Carla, and then have them all? I mean, it's just amazing. So that also has meaning. Why we're here, why we're making this dance. We're making it for Vail. You know, like, let's be conscious of everything. Like, let's not make it in a vacuum.
Right.
You know?
So you're talking a little bit about how the dancers affect the process, but what initially inspires you about a dancer? What are you looking for in your dancers when you're picking them for, especially in a situation like this, where you have a broad range?
Yeah, I think people have asked me this before, and you know, and they all assume I'm going to say technique, which is true, but it also I need a thinking dancer, a dancer in the room that's going to solve problems, and like, I'm not a choreographer that tells you like, go here on count 8 and turn, and then you go upstage. Like, this is the movement, it's happening here. Then we're gonna like manipulate it over here, and then somehow you're gonna get there because you got to meet this other dancer, and let's figure it out together. That's what happens, and I like to give them freedom for a couple reasons. One is, I want dancers to experiment with the movement. So I want to see how they're doing it and what the approach is. And then I shape it. and I take stuff out, or they'll do things that I didn't think of myself, and that it's better.
Mm-hmm. You're like,
So
yes, keep
put
that
in. There's actually a joke. I maybe told you this. There's a joke in my company that don't do anything you don't want to do on the sides. Like, how people practice pirouettes and stuff.
Right.
And I'll look and I'll be like, I love that. Let's put it in. So that's what it is.
Right,
so when I went to City
funny.
Ballet and I had Miley with me and Jason from my company, they actually, I didn't know. Miriam actually told me that they told the dancers, don't do anything you don't want to perform, because if she sees it, she'll put it in.
They were looking out for those.
Yeah,
dancers.
I was like, wow, okay, a lot is happening.
So
That's
I love,
so funny.
and maybe you were being funny or joking, but I loved. It seems like you take inspiration not just from dancers. Like Heather Watts was backing into the wing at that performance we were sitting at together, and she had her eyes, like she was shielding her eyes from the light.
Oh wait, I have to put that in.
You're like, I'm
I
gonna
forgot.
put that in.
No,
But
it was
that's
amazing. She was like looking out, and there's a part. There was during rehearsal at the tent. There's Adirondack chairs, and so Jared was sitting in one of them, and I was like, I loved it. So now there's an Adirondack chair in the back for him to sit after his solo. So it's all the process that's in,
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if I feel like you asked me something else and I can't remember.
I don't know. We're getting all over.
Yeah, I like
good.
The other thing about dancers is that my work is exposing, because I want stuff. I'm not trying to hammer them out and put me in. It's more like very exposing. And what happens is you actually get to see the dancer as a person more through the movement, even though it's my movement, but there's something about it, or the way we put it together, that exposes them more, because they can't hide behind a presentational or eyebrow.
Yes. Ooh.
That's our least fave.
Yeah.
My teacher used to always say that looks like a ballerina in pain.
Yes.
For
Yes.
the eyebrows.
That.
So I wonder, as you're talking about how much influence just happens from the room and the things around you, what do you go into the studio in a new piece thinking about? How much do you have planned out? How much does it change? Or do you just kind of like let it
No,
flow?
I plan stuff.
Yeah.
I have to plan stuff to let it go.
Right.
I can't walk. Like, I think there are choreographers that do lots of different things. Like maybe they have their piece of music, and so they know that music, but they don't have any steps, and they make it on the spot. I'm not like that. I would be a wreck.
Yeah.
Sounds like my worst nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
So, I mean, it was hard for this project because I had no music, because the music's being made as the dance is being made, which is super exciting. Caroline Shaw is making amazing music. And so it's very much about our process too, together.
Right.
And she's also, every night I text her saying the dance is 3 minutes longer. And she's like, she writes back in all caps, Pam Tanowitz. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. But anyway, so I come in. I probably have my notebook over there, but no one can see it because we're a podcast.
Yeah.
But
You'll show us later.
I can show you later. But I come in with a notebook of drawings, and it looks like a football
Patterns.
thing.
Yeah.
And then I usually have one phrase totally prepped up, like new. And then I also take from other dances where I feel like they weren't developed develop them in a different way that are still of interest to me, because I feel like nothing's new anyway. And so like, you know, the Balanchine quote, right? The famous one, just new combinations, right? So I always mix up some older stuff that is still interesting to me and with the new stuff. And and then we do different things, you know. With my dancers, I go, it's a little more complicated, but I map out like different different formats. So like say a phrase goes from downstage to upstage, you know, then we would do the same movement, but in a circular path, or reverse it and then bring it to the floor. Like, and
Gotcha.
so like,
Variations on a theme.
exactly. Here, since the process is much quicker, I'll maybe tell them to like splice something, like a shorter part of it, like take phrase 1 and phrase 2, the first 5 of each, and do 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, like that. Not everything is, I use, I like to have movement, like swatches of fabric. So it's like that chunk and that piece of fabric, piece, and then move them in and out. And
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your relationship to music. So some of your first works, then it sounded like you had to just do what was given to you.
Oh, back?
Yeah,
oh,
back.
Yes.
So now that you can do what you want, what do you find yourself attracted to musically, and how does that shape the work?
Yeah, I mean, I really am attracted to music that everybody hates. Like very avant-garde, plucky, spare. So it's hard sometimes.
That's what I liked about the first works I saw, because then
it's hard for people.
It's more direct.
I did a whole dance to Morton Feldman, which people thought was crazy because it was an 80-minute string quartet. But since then, I've also realized I have to expand, and I can't use the same thing over and over again because it's not good for me artistically. I've found that there's a lot of music that sort of combines both. Like, so I did a piece to Nan Caro string quartet. So Nan Caro is a composer who's very famous for making scores on player piano really fast. That's and Merce Cunningham has used, Mark Morris has used, but he had these string quartets that I found like nobody used. So that was super exciting. And they were accessible and still not at the same time. I think that it's important for me to figure out ways that the audience, when I use harder music, to not alienate the audience, but to figure out ways to let them in that alienating music. So that's my goal when I use that. Yeah. And then, skip to, Goldberg variations, which is like, the Goldberg variation.
Yeah.
So, when Simona Dinnerson asked me to collaborate with her, I was like, sure. And she, she actually showed me CDs, like real, this is what I play. And I was like, well, I'm definitely not doing the Goldberg variations. But then I thought, well, because I had used all these other sort of harder pieces of music, actually, that is a challenge for me.
Sounds like you like to scare yourself a little bit.
So and the Jerry Robbins and like what is happening? Like, two women collaborating on a very male project, I think is important also. I do like to scare myself. And then from there, I did the 4 quartets. So that was even more scary. And the reason why I said yes to that project was because I thought it would never happen. The producer and director at Bard, Gideon Lester, who's a huge supporter and, of me and my career and my work and my company. And we worked together on that piece. But initially I said no because I was like, it's never going to happen. And it totally happened.
And it didn't just happen. It was a huge success.
Right. I mean, Alistair Macaulay said it's the greatest dance of the 21st century.
We will return to conversations on dance in a moment. But first, this week we are sponsored by our good friends at Vayette Virtual Ballet School, the next stage of ballet training. Vayette Virtual Ballet School is a one-of-a-kind online ballet classroom providing world-class ballet training to aspiring students regardless of their location. Vayette Virtual Ballet School believes that teaching proper technique is just as important as nurturing the mental, physical, and emotional aspects of their students. Vayette Virtual Ballet School is an extra push that you need heading into your upcoming audition, competition, or summer intensives. For more information, visit VayetteVirtualBalletSchool.com. That's VEYETTE virtualballetSchool.com, or click the link in the description of this episode.
When you're making something like that, do you like self-evaluate as you're creating a work? Are you like, oh, this is I think this is pretty good for me, or like, I have no idea what this is. What's that process? Like
No.
for Four Quartets, you weren't like, oh, this is going to be a hit.
No. Oh my God. No, I was like, oh my God. I was scared shitless. I was scared, and I don't self-evaluate. And I'll tell you why. Because my most favorite thing about making dances is the process.
Mm-hmm.
I actually hate the show.
Really?
Yeah. I told you this before, didn't I?
I
I've
think
told
you did.
you, like, I'm backstage throwing up and nervous. Like,
No, I didn't know
yeah,
that.
yeah.
Oh, no.
Wow.
I think that's got to be so crazy for choreographers, because then you're in a moment where you have no control. It's just over, right?
Yes, but what's interesting about the Four Quartets piece is I'm in it. I have a cameo.
Amazing.
And so I'm worried about myself because I'm a wreck about doing it. And I'm already like, we have a bunch more shows of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, ugh. It was fun when I did it once. I did it twice because I went to London, and that was great.
Mm-hmm.
It was part of my whole like midlife crisis. Get yourself in shape. If you want to ever dance again, like you're 48 years old, like it's now or never.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're not going to go on stage when you're 68 for the first time. Like might as well just try it. So that was part of that whole gig.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, oh, I have to keep
doing
it. I know. I'm like, oh, I got to get to the
like,
gym now. Bye guys. No. But yes, back to what you're saying. It's very hard. I love the process so much. I have to let go. And then it's the dancers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's not mine.
Yeah.
It's not mine anymore.
Let's talk about Four Quartets. What kind of life is it having now? It's being performed often, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, we premiered it at Bard last summer, and then we just did it at the Barbican in London, which was my first international. It was my international debut, so it was a big deal. Yeah. And I was worried about what British audiences were going to think of me, but they were great.
Awesome.
And then we're doing it at UCLA.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, Christy at UCLA was a co-commissioner of it. So, and then I don't know if I'm allowed to say when it's
somewhere else.
Yeah. Oh, when it's happening?
In New York. It's happening in New York.
In New York.
I don't think I can say it.
Don't tell us the details.
We'll
look out for it.
But yes, and maybe some other places that aren't locked in. So I can't really say it.
But it's like, it's
but
there's
people,
a lot of interest.
There's interest. People are interested. And I think they're interested because of the collaborative. It is a dance, but it also has beautiful sets, by Bryce Martin, who's an amazing artist, lighting, Clifton Taylor, music, Kaya Sarayaho. I mean, it's an amazing costumes, Reed and Harriet, and the live music by the Knights. So it's like very rich. There's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And what was interesting about this piece actually was it was the first time I used text.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and of course, Kathy Chalfant reading, who's an unbelievable actress. I mean, she's royalty, and she couldn't have been more collaborative, and she's amazing. So there's a lot to look at. So if you're bored with the dance, you look at Kathy. No, I'm serious.
Yeah.
Like, it's made that way. It's made, there's moments of space where you take in the set and you can listen to the music and look at Kathy, and it's all okay.
Right.
And actually that's something that I got from Merce Cunningham. So a lot of people think that it's the steps, but it's not. I mean, I use Cunningham technique in my work, like clean lines and fast footwork. It's also balletic too. Use of torso. But the thing that is so inspiring from Cunningham is actually his imagination, and same with Balanchine. So it's like, yes, the steps, but it's like with Cunningham, he sets up his dances that way that you actually can go in and out. Right. You're almost supposed to, So those are the things that I really take from the people that have come before me, that are inspiring to me, or homages, but I also love Mark Morris. I love Twyla Tharp, Paul Taylor, Lucinda Child, Sarah Mitchelson. I mean, there's a lot of people that I care about their work and respect, and and it's not really a style. It's more like, if it's good, I'm going to like it.
Right.
So it's not like, oh, well, that's not my style.
Right.
I loved, what did we see the other night? What did they ABT perform? Lilac Garden.
Lilac Garden.
I
that's
stand one of
Lilac
my
Garden.
favorite.
It's so good.
One of my favorite dances. And I actually said that to Damien, and he looked at me. He was shocked and he said, why? And I said, it's a perfect ballet. There's nothing extra. Everything in there has a purpose. And so that's what I mean. Like, maybe you wouldn't necessarily think that I would love that ballet, but I love that ballet. Yeah. That's the thing. So, it can't all be Balanchine, Black and White, and Cunningham. Like, there's other dances that I, inspired by. I love, the bottle dance from Fiddler on the Roof. Not Fiddler on the Roof. Is it Fiddler on the Roof?
Fiddler.
Yeah. Of course. The bottle dance. I just got like a panic attack. I'm like, is that right? Am I saying it right? But that's like one of my favorite pieces of choreography.
I mean, it's amazing. Yeah.
So it's not only, I have a very broad, I think people might think I like one certain kind of thing, I mean, I'm definitely drawn to that more, but I have a very broad,
range of influences.
Yeah.
If it's good, if it's compelling and good, and you have something like there's urgency. That's the thing I look for when I go to, like, I'd rather see a bad dance that has urgency to it, and I could even like see why someone made it instead of like a lovely dance that I walk out and I forget about it.
Yeah.
So I'd rather see that. Like, I think that's interesting.
How do you feel affected by parameters that are set by the different commissions you might have? So say someone says, okay, Pam, I want you to do Goldberg Variations. Right. It has to be this, and you can use 6 dancers, and it's this theater.
Right.
Versus you can do anything you feel like. Come on in.
Yes.
How does that change your process?
Well, I actually like limits and I like rules, because it actually pushes me in ways that maybe I wouldn't. So I don't see it as a negative.
Right.
If it's something I don't want to do, I'm not going to do it. You know what I mean? And Goldberg was actually came from my company. Like, it was so it was an idea that sprung out of me meeting Simona and my manager at the time, Aaron Maddox, who's amazing. He put the whole thing together. I mean, Goldberg was really the first sort of like, even though I had worked for decades, it was I just did one show a year in New York. And then when I was done, I went to the next show, and Aaron actually helped put this whole thing together. And it was about budget, how many dancers I could put in and things like that. And then he went after all the commissions, like Montclair, all the different co-commissioners. It's a lot of work. So it wasn't like someone came to me and said, we're going to do all this for you. Like, it came from my team, which was me and Aaron.
Right.
2 people. Yeah. I mean, it was like a labor of love.
Right.
But then, and even with the T.S. Eliot, it was Bard labor of love. I mean, they are just amazing. So those 2 projects are different. Like a Taylor or a Graham coming to me is sort of is what you're saying. And so with Graham, first of all, I was having coffee with Janet for 2 years before she wanted to figure out the right project for me. And in the end, she was right. And then we talked about my interest in history. And so she came to me and said, how would you feel about like using parts of Graham, like dances in your dance? And like, and I got to go to the archive, and she gave me all these DVDs to watch, and it was really fun and like super up my alley. It was exciting.
That's awesome.
And then she just said it would be lovely if it was a female composer, because we're celebrating women, but like, it wasn't like you have to.
Right.
But I love Caroline Shaw, so I picked 2 of her scores. And they're performing it here on August 9th.
And we're all missing it.
And we're all missing it.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. You were telling us.
Yeah. But anyway, so that's exciting. So that was the Graham. The Taylor was different. They're like, we're doing a Bach festival. You have to use Bach. But any Bach. So I got to choose, but it was for that. Yeah. And I thought, do I want to do that again? Because now I don't want to get pegged as that again. But then I thought, it's Paul Taylor. How can I say no?
Yeah.
And I guess allegedly he picked me. Like he knew before he passed away, he picked like a couple of the last choreographers that are making stuff. So that feels like an honor. And then he passed away. So then it felt really important for me to do that piece. But I did get parameters for that one. City Ballet was crazy because it was so last minute. I used like a rough draft of another a dance that I made for ABT workshop a year before. So the music was already, but I told them about my music for the next piece. They're very open. I mean, I like to get their opinions. Like I sent the score to Justin, just like, I want to use this. And he's like, sounds great, Yeah. But it's not like you have to use this.
Right.
They're very supportive. I feel very supported in what I want to do.
Good.
So I don't feel like people are telling me what to do.
Right.
Yeah. So Pam, let's talk a little bit about the Vail Dance Festival and your history here. How many years have you been coming to the festival?
2015, 17. 2015, I made a new dance. That was my first time. Then 2017. Then I came quickly last year with a piece that I had already made on Patty Delgado and two of my dancers, Jason Collins and Victor Lozano. And here. Yeah. So 4. Yeah.
And so what is it about this festival that makes you really want to keep coming back and really be able to play here and experiment with new things?
Well, I think sort of what we talked about before, just the nature of being able to work with dancers that I've never worked with, getting, collaborating with them. And really, even if I come with a plan in my notebook, it always ends up being different. And I think it's really exciting. And I do get to play. This piece is, I feel like I'm experimenting and doing research on a lot of different things. It was important for me to try to do some work on point. I have a lot to learn. So I wanted to include that, but then I didn't know how, because I also had Melissa, who's barefoot, and then as everyone wear jazz shoes, or just trying to figure out that is sort of interesting to me. Like, so for example, this piece now, I was able to figure out that if Miriam starts in point, and then if Calvin and Carla come out in ballet shoes, then the rest of the piece can be in bare feet, and there's a progression, but I needed to make it work. So like that's something that I had to figure out. So things like that, how scheduling determines sections. Like, so I actually was thinking about a duet for Melissa and Carla, but then it ended up I had Calvin because Melissa was busy with her piece. So then I made so like to be open to that. And that sort of exposes the process as well.
And sometimes you don't have dancers there that you're going to be using because they're not here quite yet.
Right. Like, so Jared, Angle, like I actually worked really fast. Like, so originally when I made the cast with Damien, he's like, blah, blah, these are the people. And then Jared's coming late. I'm like, it's totally fine because I'm not even going to have anything. Meanwhile, when Jared came, I had so much done.
Right.
But I didn't see that as a problem, as like something negative. It was something for me to solve. How do I make this work now? Because he's an amazing dancer, and I love his presence on stage. And I felt like it was really important to weave him in. So I had to work harder,
So one of the things that struck us certainly when we came to rehearsal was the way that you were using the space that it's in. It's completely unique to the Vail Amphitheater. So what inspired that versus say, I'm just going to use this as traditionally as anyone would? Can you tell us about some of the ways
everyone else does that? So I'll just try something else, and not against them. I'm like, because I just feel like there's all this extra space here. Why can't we just? It bothers me. So I just want to try it, because I can.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm planning this dance for the sidewalk that divides the audience that is under the, what do you call that? The amphitheater, and then the lawn people.
The lawn people.
and that's, so I'll have two dances going on at the same time, but the people in the amphitheater will only see Miriam solo, and the people in the lawn will get to see both. That's interesting to me.
Yeah.
And also that moment, it is, you're kind of highlighting the division between what they're wearing on their feet at that point. Miriam is doing this like endless series of borets around the perimeter of the whole stage.
Right, sort of like marking the territory.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, so are they going to have sneakers, or was it just because it was raining the other day? The people that were going to start the ballet up in the...
Oh, they'll have sneakers.
Yeah. So you're really having a whole evolution of footwear in the ballet.
Exactly, because it's like sneakers and pointe shoes, then they go away, then it's ballet slippers, and it's bare feet.
I love it.
We have everything.
Yeah, exactly. It's great.
Everything for everyone.
Yeah. So is there going to be music at that first part? We couldn't, because there was a lot happening.
It's not...
Yesterday, figuring it out.
We're going to figure it out today,
Okay.
I think. It's not totally done. There'll probably be like some drum beats and some things. But yeah, there'll be.
Did Caroline just come up with that idea to take that riff of Fourth Act Swan Lake? Or what was that?
Well, what was interesting was because I have, the people can't see it, but I'll show it to you. I have this book I carry around. So I have this just like duet, like this book, like to show you how to partner. And so I made, some of this stuff is Carla and Calvin do some of these diagrams. I love these diagrams. Like, look at the people.
I love it. So what is this book? Let's read it. So we potted a textbook on partnering.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I just like
Nikolai.
I just randomly bought it.
Nikolai
Do you know him? I don't know.
I've never seen
I feel like I've seen that book before.
Yeah.
I feel like I have. Well, we'll link to it on Amazon or something.
Maybe like after the podcast, he'll get like 1 million orders.
Yeah, there you go.
We're really influential.
I know, like obviously. Just like look at the diagrams of the hands.
Yeah.
Like just to see all the different grips up here. Do you see that?
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Anyway, so I was telling Caroline and I get along really well. And so I was explaining to her how I put it together. So I'm using these sort of iconic or conventional and traditional balletic forms and breaking them down. So they don't turn. They're disjointed. You saw it, right?
Yeah.
So you saw, so when Calvin and Carla come down, right? So instead of turning her, he runs around her, for example, things like that. So she then took that same idea and transferred it to the music. So she just like likes to know everything.
That's so cool.
How I put stuff together.
Right.
Before we came, I drew out the dance, which is not the dance right now, but she asked me for a score of the dance and then write in like sounds that I was hearing. So like I did the whole thing. So that's where we started from, and then we sort of went away from that. So
did you start any of the composition process before you guys got here, or has this been probably like you had that written down? Yeah.
I don't know.
Like when you got here, there was nothing to listen to.
No.
I
But
mean,
I'm sure she had stuff in her head.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, I just mean like it's such a quick process, like really for the dance and composition, all of that to be put together.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So how does that an extra challenge for you with not having the music when you're in the studio? How do you kind of work around that?
I don't really. Well, in the beginning of every dance, even dances that are to the music, I work in silence because a lot of times, I mean, I'll have ideas of areas of what I want to happen, but I also have the movement, and then the dancers and we do it, and we see where things land.
And then you mark it from
then we mark it from there. So it's not that different.
Okay.
Right.
That's good.
It is, but at a certain point I really wanted sound because I think it would be inspiring for the dancers to or help create the environment. But it's not it's fine for me.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not stressing you.
No.
Well, I think we have to let you go, unfortunately, get to your rehearsal. But we're so excited for Monday's performance. And thank you for taking time out to talk to us.
Thanks,
Appreciate
guys.
it. Thank you. Thank you for joining us this week. If you would like to support the Conversations on Dance podcast, there are a few ways that you can help. Click over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. Download episodes when you listen to allow our analytics to better understand our listenership. Join our Facebook group, Conversations on Dance, Friends of the Pod, or you can offer a donation. Conversations on Dance has always been and will always be free to our listeners. You can help us continue to create and produce this unique behind-the-curtain look at the dance world by visiting conversationsondancepod.com/support. Thank you for tuning in. See you next week.